I think making sure that the homes that families live in, the homes that children live in, to me, that's the most important place to be making sure it's healthy, because these little kiddos, they're the most affected by unhealthy environments and they're our future. So if we can help them now, then the future is just going to be healthier in general.
This is the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. Revitalizing the world together. Welcome to the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. This is your host, Neil Collins. It is a show that is supported by our work at Latitude Realty. In it, we explore our natural and built environments and how they can be used as a force for good. The show sets out to inspire impactful ideas, meaningful change, human wellness, and ecological restoration through interviews and easy-to-digest conversations. Our guests range from industry leaders to iconoclasts, from both well-known figures to everyday people leading extraordinary lives. This is a show for people looking for education and inspiration on how real estate can be done differently. Hey everybody, this is your podcast host of the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast, Neil Collins. I'm really pleased to be joined with Kate Hamblet. Kate is an owner and architect of Balanced Architecture, and she's a licensed architect and sustainability expert. Balanced Architecture is a residential design studio that puts wellness and sustainability at the heart of every project. As a wellness architect, she designs fresh, modern structures and spaces that nourish the body, the mind, and the earth. Her mission is to guide people to make their home environment as healthy as possible and to turn their homes from an unwelcoming environment to a healthful retreat. And as you can tell from that statement, you know why we've invited Kate on. Kate, thanks for coming on and taking the time.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, Kate, I've been following your work, and I think it's a mutual interest here. I'm really curious. So you have such an amazing mission that really blends sustainability, health and wellness, and architecture together. But what did you always think that you were going to be an architect? Like, where did you grow up and what did you think that you're going to be doing?
Yeah. So yes, I am, I guess, one of the architects that from very early age decided this was what I was going to do for my life. So I was in like third grade, maybe, when I discovered how much I loved it and didn't fully grasp what it was that architects do. But yeah, I just knew that I wanted to be an architect.
What do you think that was that your parents or your grandparents?
It's funny. No. Well, yes, my dad, actually. I think it was a couple of things. I always played with Legos, like obsessed with Legos when I was little. So I just had this like gigantic bucket. It was actually a drawer of just random Lego pieces. And I would always be building and creating just whatever I felt like making. So that I think just that the love of that definitely put me in the focus of, I like just creating things. But the thing I think that really made me realize that architecture was cool was my dad always, who was not an architect, no architectural background at all. He was actually a captain on a container ship. So very different lifestyle. But he designed our house back in the early 80s. And ever since he designed it, he was always sketching up ideas on how he wanted to change it or add to it or whatever. So he was always at the dining room table sketching and coming up with these plans. And I would just sit with him and sketch my own plans and make things. I'm like, well, this is fun. Like, I loved laying out spaces. And at the time, I was mostly designing swimming pools and tree houses, but it was still like, this is cool. I can design whatever I want. So yeah, that I think just started, got the ball rolling basically on.
That's so cool that
where I was going to end up.
I feel like your dad has, and I'm going to really just project onto somebody that I don't know right now, but like that American spirit of home that's so vernacular. Of, hey, let me add on to this, or let me design my house. And I feel like now it's so rare to find people that are like, yeah, I'm just going to tackle that myself. I'm going to design it or I'm going to build it. And we need to add a room on here. And like, that's how it feels like our colonial past.
Oh,
That's what it
yeah.
was. But now it's like, we need an expert and a designer and an engineer. And we're not even going to, we might as well just go move if we want to do anything to our house.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, especially here in New England, that is certainly every old house has the most interesting additions to it
Yeah,
as
I
they
love
added
that.
on as their families grew. So yeah, very cool.
So you're
Um,
growing up in New Hampshire, or in New England. You knew from an early age you wanted to be an architect. What did you go in thinking, hey, health and wellness and sustainability like that? That is a rare combination that I find.
For sure. No, not at all. I grew up in New Hampshire, on a mountain in the mountains of New Hampshire. So I was always in the woods, just always in nature, whether it was skiing or mountain biking or hiking or just exploring. So I just, that was my life, being part of nature. And I didn't really know anything else. But it didn't cross my mind that I needed to protect it, aside from conserving water and recycling and that kind of stuff. Until in college, I learned that, but going into college and knowing that I wanted to be an architect, I didn't know that I had the power to make those changes, and that it was actually even needed at the time when I was 18 years old. So it wasn't until I got into college and I started out at a school in Rhode Island and ended up transferring out of there just because I needed to get out of New England and decided to go to school in a desert. I think I was lacking sun and ended up in Tucson. So I found myself in Arizona in the desert there and just loved that experience of, for one thing, it was like a whole nother world going from New England to the other side of the country and into a desert. First of all, the people were just absolutely amazing, like so kind and so outgoing and so very different than the New England style of behavior.
Vitamin D.
Yeah, yeah, it must be right. When I was there, because Tucson is a desert, the way we were taught was, I think, very different than a place where there is tons of resources and tons of water and not an insane amount of heat. So I was taught in school how to just work with the resources that you have, conserve the resources that you have, and be thinking about that. Like, that's what shapes design. And from, a place where it's probably not the best place to be for a whole mass of people to be living and building, because there aren't a lot of resources in the desert. It was just a very interesting perspective. And
Yeah.
that, I think, just got me thinking about so architecture has an impact on the environment and on, the communities and everything. And so it got the wheel spinning, I think, on going into the path of sustainability. So
One of the things that you said that has been a guiding beacon for our work, at least, has been let the constraints guide and unlock your creativity.
yeah.
And it feels like what you're talking about is the same thing. Like, what are the constraints and the obstacles of our natural environment, and how does that inform our work and your creativity?
Yeah.
And so from architecture school, did you know that sustainability was something that you could infuse into your work? Like, what kind of projects were you working on? Where did you go from school? Were you residential or commercial?
I've been all over the place. So after school, well, actually, I was still in school when I came across this quote. So, like, knowing that sustainability, it's out there and it's something that we can do in designing our buildings to try to make the planet healthier. it was more this, like what I think still a lot of people hear the word sustainability and they think, oh, okay, well, just more energy efficient or using zero VOC paints or whatever. But it was towards the end of my schooling time, that I came across the William McDonough, the architect. He did Cradle to Cradle, co-authored it. But I read something where he said that buildings should nourish and restore living systems. And then he went into this comparison of how buildings should be like trees, and because trees, they're grow up out of the earth. They use everything that they do is powered by the earth. And when they're done, they go back into the earth and they help bring on new life. And that just that was a very defining moment where I'm like, oh yeah, like why can't buildings do that? So that was a really just interesting and fun thing to all of a sudden realize. And that was a very long time ago, like 2005, maybe. And I'm still trying to see how to incorporate it into everything I do. So to get back to your question of what I did after college, I kept moving around to a lot of different places to find a place where I could really just go all in and instill that basically, mission that I was on, and the philosophy that was running my desire to design buildings. And I never quite found it, because I mean, it is such a lofty goal. But I bounced around and then ended up starting my own practice to try to really fully dig into that.
What a major shift though, to compare two people, and I'm going to lose some people because I know that he's an icon in the industry, but an architect like I.M. Pei that designed and built structures that were meant to endure time, to make a statement, to showcase like the imperial institutionalism of whatever organization is going to be residing in there, versus a cradle to cradle philosophy that's like, if it's from the earth, it needs to return to the earth. And
right.
Wow, what a different arc to get sent down.
Yeah. Yes. And I don't know, like, had I not come across that quote and that idea, would I have gone in a completely different direction and not really ever wrapped my head around that idea? I don't know, but I'm glad I came across it, and I'm glad it propelled me into the direction of trying to just create buildings that do nourish and restore all living systems.
What does that look like for you? I mean, it sounds like you're doing much more residential work right now. Is that right?
I am. So yeah, right out of school, I did a lot of school work at institutional architecture. So elementary schools, and that I worked for an architect that was in Acton, Massachusetts. So I went from Tucson to Massachusetts, and then later Colorado, and then back to New Hampshire. So I've gone all over the place. But there I did have a really wonderful mentor who was the owner of that architecture firm. And we definitely saw eye to eye on creating spaces that are, designed for, more than just the functionality of it, and thinking about how it affects the people that are in the space, and the environment as well. So that was good. And then after I did that, I let's see here, bounced around again to a company that we did assisted living, independent living. So aging facilities and hospitals. I thought at one point, in school, I did a project all about designing a hospital and how it was so important to get hospitals which is really interesting. I never really thought about this, but how you design hospitals to make people healthier. So you're not designing a hospital that just so that the doctors and nurses there can make people healthier, that the hospital itself is able to make people healthier, the building. And because of, making sure that they have views to the outside, or that you're, using materials that aren't going to contribute to poor quality of health. So that when I jumped over to that other architecture company thinking that I'd love getting into hospital work, and I did not. So I moved from there, and then that's when we moved out to Colorado. And in Colorado, I went back to doing some school work, and but then I settled in a company that did multifamily residential housing. And yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I could keep going. I have a long history. There that was interesting because I learned so much, and every place I've been to, I've learned so much. So that is just, a wonderful thing about being a part of a lot of different things. You get to pick up a lot along the way. But the multifamily company that I was at, the company itself was fantastic, but there was no drive from the developers, the clients, that we were working with they would do the minimum they had to do, as far as sustainability goes, as far as energy efficiency, and everything that they did was, and these are just the particular clients from this office, but everything that they did was just what is the bare minimum they can do to sell their buildings at the highest price they possibly can. And so it was very hard from, trying to make the world a better place when I was up against something like that. And after that I actually left architecture for a little bit and started, when I moved back to New Hampshire, started working for a construction company, and just had to basically recalibrate, figure out what I wanted to do and how I was going to actually do the things I wanted to do, how I was going to make these healthy and sustainable buildings. And that's when I decided to start my own company.
That's amazing. And why I love to get into everybody's backstories is I want listeners to pick up that it's not just, hey, I went to something like architecture school and then I became this health and wellness and sustainability advocate in my work, that it was just this linear process, but it actually requires, so, it's the tip of the iceberg type of thing of what you can see above water and everything that's below it, and really how to reframe our experiences. Like when you're talking about hospitals, I was in a group with a hospital developer that I was really excited because I'm over here thinking, we can design our hospitals to incorporate biophilia and preventative health. And how do we quick start their recovery process? And come to find out, he approaches it from how do you maximize profit from not only the doctors that are going to be in the institutions that are renting that space, but how can they also maximize their profit? And it was kind of like two ships passing in the middle of the night.
Yes.
But I don't think we ever really found our stride in conversation.
Yeah, that is so true. That's exactly how I felt at that multifamily company as well.
I've got to ask, so you're moving around a lot. What brought you back to your home state? And two, was there something, like if you're working on home design and you're thinking about wellness and sustainability, and you've lived in all these different places, I'm not sure if you were renting, if you had bought a home in each place, but like what were you doing there? I mean, were you out of alignment in that sense, or were you looking for certain types of properties and going off that?
That is such a good question. It's like a therapy session. I don't know. I've always wanted to be on the move. And so moving out to Colorado, it was very much, my husband, we were just dating at the time. We're both huge skiers and just wanted to live out there before we had children and all that stuff, where we were more limited with what we could do with our lives. So that's what brought us out there. And then we had children, and then we moved back to New Hampshire because that's where our parents are and the people that could help us raise our children. So that I think just always being open to uh, exploring new things. Like I'm always thinking, I want to check this out, or I don't know. The grass is always greener, maybe. I'm not really sure. But as far as moving around in different offices, it was always, I was looking for something and I never quite found it. As far as finding work that was like what I really wanted to be focusing on, and that was really meaningful, and that I had clients that I didn't have to try to convince that this was a great thing to do, or just, the people I worked with, trying to convince them to let me share my ideas with the clients that this was a great thing to do. So that was always the search, I think.
Interesting. Yeah. The part about moving back home to be closer to your family and community is something that we talk a lot about. You had mentioned sustainability. It felt like it was a lot about electrification and energy efficiency and low VOCs. And what we realize is that, very few people are actually talking about integrating community in where they live and the type of housing they live in and the geographical location. And that's so important whenever we have these truly catalyzing moments of having kids and, feeling like you're just stressed and strained and pulled in 50,000 different directions for a life event that we're not really totally prepared for.
Yes, very true. Yeah. And certainly community is one, like a major aspect of creating healthy and sustainable lives. So
you have something in your website that you talk about happiness, that you're designing homes not only for health and well-being, but also a happiness element. And that's a really interesting word to use. And I got to do my homework and realize that you're talking about habits and patterns and lifestyle choices. But I'd love to transition into how do you do what you do? Like what's the methodology behind creating a healthy home?
So yeah, there is a lot that goes into it. And the idea, just saying healthy home, there's a healthy for the people that live there, healthy for the people that build it, healthy for all the other people in the world that are affected by the materials that go into building your home, healthy for the planet. So it's a gigantic umbrella and there's tons of stuff that goes into it. So to like, what I always say is, you said at the beginning, nourishing the body, the mind, and the earth. So making sure a healthy home does that, and a home that can enhance your health, your happiness, and your longevity. Those are kind of the core things that a healthy home does. As far as how it does it, it's a lot to think about. So it's making sure that the basic needs are met on a physical health level. So making sure the air quality is good and making sure the water quality is good, but then going into the lighting, making sure that the lighting design is designed in a way where you don't have glare, and it's working with your circadian rhythms, and using daylighting, so natural sunlight coming into your space as much as you possibly can, without making your home uncomfortable by overheating or overlighting the space or creating so much glare that you can't be in the space. Do you want me to go through all the things, or
No,
there's so much?
I know. I don't want to completely overwhelm you to think like,
Yeah.
we just got to run through a list here. But I guess it's if someone is coming to you and saying, hey, I want to design a house, or maybe they want to remodel an existing house that they have, because I'm still coming of the mindset of most of our built environment has already been built. And it's only the small percentage of people that are truly building from the ground up, brand new. So how do you set the stage for people to even start thinking about, let's design towards your life instead of let's just build 4 walls and a roof that fits your budget.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, a couple of things. The list that I was going off before was I have these, I call the 8 healthy home elements. So I go through those 8 elements, which is air, water, light. If you are familiar with the well building standard, it is basically that just in a residential format. So comfort, that's thermal comfort, noise, how you're eating, your nutrition, your ability to work out in the space, your the mind component, the biophilia component, and then also safety. So that's kind of gives an overview of when somebody's like, well, I want to do a healthy home. I'm like, okay, these are the factors that we definitely want to be considering and what part is most important to you. But when I approach a client and start a new project, it's the very first thing we need to do is get to what they want to do and why they want to do it, and which I call their purpose statement. So because every single person is different, not everybody wants to have this, gigantic wellness kitchen, and that won't drive them. Or I'm not thinking of tons of examples off the top of my head, but it's just like I said, it's not about designing 4 walls and a roof. It's not about figuring out how many rooms you want to have and what the square footage is of each of those rooms. It's talking about what makes you happy, what makes you comfortable, what makes you uncomfortable in your house right now, what's frustrating to you. And it's really solving those problems that they currently have and making them go away. And that just helps them be happier.
Do you find that there's items that people are ignorant of right now because they don't notice them? Like that, my evolution into more of the healthy home realm was picking up that I do hear a mechanical hum all the time because my HVAC is actually overbuilt for the size of my house. And it goes off all the time because I don't have insulation in the wall. There's like this cascading list of things that I didn't really realize that was going on. But once I did start picking up on them, I started to realize, wow, I've got a lot of work to do in this place. And that's where I hit the other barrier of I truly don't know how to do that.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, I think observing your house is really important, and seeing all those little things. That one little thing might not be a big deal, but as it builds up, and all these other little things, like you're always tripping over shoes when you walk in the door, or there's no place to put your groceries down when you walk in, like just these little things that as you move throughout your day and really think about what you're experiencing, how it's making you feel, then that's when you start putting this list together and start realizing what it is that's going to, by taking care of those things, you're not going to have those little irritation throughout your day. Or so that's definitely the first step. And then the next step is, okay, now what do I do about it? And that's hopefully where I can come in and help point people in the right direction.
Interesting. So from the perspective, we're trying to design to de-stress and create a conducive habitat for your lifestyle. What are some of those common elements that you think are mainstays in residential designs?
Well, I just, the clients that I've worked with, it's, for one thing, to de-stress, it's always the entryway is a huge issue. And, just making sure that that's well organized, and making sure your kitchen is designed in a way that can make cooking healthy foods easier. So that's thinking about the layout of how that goes.
Can
lighting.
We talk about that for a second? Actually,
Oh.
the kitchen is really, I think, something a lot of people can relate on. Hey, I'm coming out of a busy day. I know that I should be cooking food, but like we end up, especially if you're living quite in an urban setting, the urge to call for takeout is just so easy. I've never equated that back down to kitchen design or the design element. I've always attributed it to, I had a really busy day. Do you find a linkage there? It sounds like tangentially that is what you're implying. The design of the kitchen can go towards a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah, it definitely can. For the big thing I see, and I've experienced this now, a few years ago, we renovated our own home and I redid the kitchen. It was a small house and it was a very dysfunctioning kitchen when we moved in. Like it was just weird. But then we gutted it, put in a new kitchen, and it was still small, but it was amazing how much more productive I could be in that kitchen and how much more I actually enjoyed being in the space and wanted to be doing those things in the kitchen. So I had that nice, well-organized kitchen, well laid out kitchen for a while. And then we sold our house recently and now I'm in a rental, and it's again, just a very old layout, not like well thought out. And it's amazing how I'm back to being so unproductive and no desire to be in there, making things. So what I found is that, when you have no matter what, healthy food and food prep is going to take time. But if you can lay out your kitchen in a way that makes it as least stressful as possible, so you have a nice amount of workspace to be doing all your veggie prep or whatever, and you're in a space that is actually well functioning, everything's as easy as possible when you're there. And it's a really nice space to be in. It's full of light and it has, plants and living things around you, and people can be in there with you. And there's not like obnoxious sounds coming from, your all like mechanical systems or whatever. It's just like a really comfortable, enjoyable space to be in. Then you're much more likely to go in there and spend the time on a Sunday afternoon and prep your food so that when you do come home on a Wednesday, being absolutely exhausted from work and not wanting to make anything, you don't call up your takeout, you go into your fridge and get the food that you prepared over the weekend. So
I love it. Interesting.
That's the hope. That's the goal.
Hey everybody, this is Neil. We are going to get back to this great conversation in just 1 second. But I think it's fair to say that right now we are facing some pretty unprecedented challenges in the 21st century. I mean, you name it, environmentally, socially, economically, we've got some big problems that we need to overcome. And that's why, for me personally, and the people that work with us at Latitude, we want to dedicate our time and our energy so that we are not only working to put food on the table and a roof over our heads, but also make the world a better place. And so if you are at all interested in combining your sustainability values with a very powerful financial model of real estate, then I highly encourage you to check out what we are doing at Latitude. We are creating something truly special with a tribe of change agents that for now is working across North America. And hopefully one day in the future, with you coming on board, we can be working across the globe. So please check us out. You can go to www.chooselatitude.com, or you can find us on social media at latitude.realty on Instagram, and we are also on Facebook. Okay, let's get back into it. Well, I find it fascinating that you went from a kitchen designed on your own that you found very conducive for that kind of healthy habit to, okay, I'm in a rental right now and I'm not going to those positive habits as often as I should. Yeah, how fascinating. Where do you fall on kind of the conversation about gas and electrification around the appliances and in the kitchen, particularly in the kitchen, because it's almost like heresy to tell people, gas might be not a future option in designing your house.
Oh yeah. Which is good. hope it isn't. So yes, I'm all for electrification. Every place that I've lived in as an adult has had a gas range, but I grew up with an electric range. I don't care what I'm cooking on. So I'm not a good person to say that gas is, not supreme. But my parents now have an induction oven stove range, and it's amazing. Like I would use that. I mean, the fact that you can boil water in like 30 seconds is, to me, there's no going back to gas after you have that. And that's an electric oven range. So yeah, I'm all for getting rid of gas and just fully electrifying. And I mean, out in California, they're making it happen. Commercial kitchens are doing it. Food is still fantastic. So I think there's no reason to be bringing gas into your home, and also from a health aspect.
Yeah, it's a really convoluted lobbying space. Like there's an effort right now going on that's talking about what is it, like utility industry for a balanced climate. And they're making the argument that they're doing so much like gas work to capture methane from farms, and that it's the natural and the climate safe route to go to use natural gas. And it's just like, I don't know if this is the right side of history that you're going to be on, but it's very confusing for the people that are getting these messages saying, oh, okay, well, they're saying that they're pro climate, they're friendly on the climate. And it's really hard to wade through this.
It is. Yeah. I mean, that's everything. If you are on the like technically not sustainable side, you're going to do everything you can to make it look like you are. So yeah, it's certainly frustrating, and it's hard. You have to do a lot of research and to know who's really telling the truth and what really is good and what's not. And so yes, it's frustrating.
It is. And that's a great question that people come to us a lot about, is how do we choose a designer, or how do we choose a contractor if we like what you're putting out, but we don't have the words and the vocabulary and like the well thought out design ideas. Do you have any advice on how people can go about doing that and enabling them to find the right kind of professionals that can give them that advice?
Yes, I think it's not spectacularly easy yet to find. So if you were to Google sustainable architect, at this point, I think any architect that has a website will mention something about sustainability. So it's just diving deeper into everybody's profile within that, within their websites to probably get a better understanding and talking to them. On the contractor side, that I would say more word of mouth, like trying to find contractors that really understand healthy and sustainable building. I think as designers, we're there a little bit sooner because the contractor has to relearn like completely how to build their buildings with these, new systems and approaches and materials that we're recommending. So it's a lot more work on their end to go into more healthy and sustainable practices. But I don't know if that answered your question at all.
Yeah, I've got a really good friend that's a phenomenal green builder. I'll give him a shout out at JRA Green Building here in Portland. And they're kind of at the forefront of the industry, where they will work with an architect that says they have a sustainability agenda, but actually don't have a lot of practice there. And some of the experiences they have is like a complete devolvement of communication, because there's some like design problem and they're not communicating with the contractor right. And the contractor's trying to say, hey, we could just figure this out. And then other times we see the architect and the designer really knows, hey, this is how we're gonna do it. And like you're saying, the contractors have a very steep learning curve, and it's almost like a bad fit from the very beginning. It's like you're not even speaking the same languages. So I don't know how this is going to come together over the next 12 months.
Yeah, it's certainly frustrating. So one thing what I like to do, I have my own podcast, and it's geared towards homeowners and people that are looking to go through a renovation or a new home build. And my hope for the podcast is just to teach the homeowners, the people that are going to be investing their money and building this for themselves and their families, teach them how to talk to the architects and how to talk to the contractors and what to be looking for, so that they don't go into it totally blind, and know that like just give them some confidence, basically, that when they start talking to a contractor, that is totally, they can tell if they're on the same page or not. And same with an architect. And then also just giving them information about how, if you live in a place and you can't find a contractor that really is like on the forefront of sustainability and health, how to talk to them in a way and provide some resources for them that could start getting them in that direction without, like totally pissing them off and not wanting them to be a part of your project, or just brush off your thoughts without really considering them. So that's, I think, is what I really enjoy doing, is just educating people, and letting the homeowners and families, giving them the power, I guess, to make these changes and to feel comfortable talking to architects and contractors.
Well, yeah, let's talk about your podcast. When did you start it, and what's the theme, and how's it been?
Hey, so it's called the Healthy Home Design Podcast, and I started it, I think, a year and a half ago, and it's certainly a little side gig that I do. And I'm a one-person show for my architecture business, and also just doing the podcast on my own. So it's been, I try to do it weekly, but I can't guarantee that it's always weekly. It's been on a whole little hiatus right now for a month or so. So, but the point is, just to share the information I have, to educate anybody that wants to listen. It's really, I do try to focus on families, mostly because I think making sure that the homes that families live in, the homes that children live in, to me, that's the most important place to be making sure it's healthy, because these little kiddos, they're the most affected by unhealthy environments, and they're our future. So if we can help them now, then the future is just going to be healthier in general. So it's geared towards families, but really anybody can get things out of it. And I just try to answer questions. Like, I get so many questions about healthy materials, so I cover that a lot, and just other ways of thinking that you might not even consider would be a part of a healthy house, like designing with nature in mind, as far as incorporating nature and biophilia into the design. Or a recent one was about small houses, not tiny houses, but houses how to make your house smaller without compromising how it feels, and actually, making it be exactly what you want without this gigantic footprint. So all those topics, and teaching as much as I can.
It's really great to talk about designing from a child's eye. And I've thought about this a lot, and I haven't really talked with anybody about it. I've tried to reach out to actually playground designers that incorporate natural materials for children, because one of the things that stands out to me is, if you go to a park, it doesn't matter if you're in Arizona, New Hampshire, or Portland, they all look the same. Like, did you go to Costco and like get the same slide and the same stuff? And it's kind of a sterile experience where maybe they've got some bark chips on the ground, but other than that, it's just this like big petroleum factory out there. And that's where it's like, well, yeah, what if you were to design not just the landscaping and the play structures from their perspective, but also the house and the health implications. Because what was really big for us is Dr. Zach Bush is a MD, triple board certified doctor that put out a statistic that said 54% of our kids before they're 17 will develop a chronic illness they're going to have to deal with for the rest of their lives. And you're like, holy smokes, 54%. That's incredible. Like that's asthma, that's diabetes, that's sickle cell anemia, autoimmune diseases. And you're like, well, why is that? And where is that coming from? And you, at least I've traced that back to what is our environment and what's it getting built out of and how is it getting designed? And we seem to be at this like critical junction of how do we design better?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, from the perspective of how to turn what would be a fun playground into a home, I mean, I love that. Like the idea of making your house playful and making it, for one, feel like it's, just an extension of nature. But then also, and that goes way back to the happiness conversation, was what can you do to make your house happier and make it something really fun to be in and bring back that childhood spirit. And, yeah, so I, I agree. And it's funny, with talking about playgrounds, and I've always wanted to design playgrounds too. I think that would be really fun. There's a few around my home that are, very natural, made out of boulders and, logs and whatever else they found in the area. And it's just a really cool place to play. But a couple of years ago, I was in Amsterdam. We brought my son when he was 2, and which I would never recommend doing, but I did not. I learned my lesson there not to travel with a 2-year-old, but we spent a lot of time in the playgrounds there, and they are amazing. So they were doing exactly what you're talking about. They were fun, and they were built out of the materials that are around there, and totally captivating. So, yeah, it's worth taking that time to not just plop something down, whether it's a house or a playground or whatever, and think about the environment that it's in and how it's going to affect the people that use it. So,
yeah, what's fun is we have a 4-year-old right now, and he will identify plant species outside that I don't even know, or he'll like really tune into things. And, big part of our work is trying to conceive our built and natural environments more holistically, instead of just we're designing the envelope and everything inside, but like what's the community as the extension or your immediate landscaping. And we get a lot of people that they want the yard because they've envisioned their kids playing soccer in their front yard or in their backyard or wherever. And the permaculturalist in me always cringes a little bit, thinking that play is only for a child with a ball or something along those lines, where I get to experience it on a daily basis of like my child picking a flower and creating an altar or climbing the tree and really just exploring a natural environment, and like loves the bugs and the worms and planting and everything that comes out of it.
yeah, right. And it's not just a turf.
It's not just a turf,
Yeah.
not just this big dead green space. My favorite are the lawns that they don't even want to keep up with the lawn maintenance by mowing it. They just want to put down AstroTurf. And my brain just scrambles. Like, what is going on? Like, I've got to wonder what trauma has happened in their life to just erase all natural living things from their world.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely could be a deep dive. But yeah, it's crazy. And it's definitely, we need to get back to everybody wanting as much nature surrounding them as possible.
Are you finding that this is a upward trajectory? Are more people tuning into your message, or is this you're shouting out into the darkness here?
I feel both ways sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I'm just talking to nobody, and then every once in a while I'll get a very reassuring message or question or whatever that keeps me going, and that makes me realize that people are, I mean, I think just in general, much more conscious of this. And especially now that everybody's stuck in their homes for an entire year at this point, understanding like, oh gosh, I need to do something. I'm not feeling connected. I'm not feeling good. Why am I not feeling good? And going back to nature is on a lot of more people's minds, because there's so much more information out there about it, that being in nature is, it does make you happier. It makes you less stressed and helps you heal from sickness faster and all these wonderful things. And it's out there now that a lot of people know about. So I think I do have more people coming to me wanting this information, and hopefully even more soon. Like, I think it's snowballing.
Do you think that that message of inviting nature in is synonymous or compatible with very dense urban living? Like if somebody's in the middle of an urban block and you've got you're on a 5,000 square foot lot and you've got houses on either side and you're looking at houses across the street, like how do you incorporate nature into design like that?
Yeah, it's definitely not as easy as just plopping a house down in the middle of the woods. But there are always ways. It unfortunately, I think the best way to do it is from a community aspect. So from a master plan aspect, where rather than you walk out your front door to a sidewalk, to a street, you have nature in between those spaces, or maybe you don't even have a street at all. But when you can't do any of that stuff, when it's just, how am I going to make my house feel more connected to nature when I have another house 3 feet away from me? So I guess bringing plants in is a big one, bringing nature in, and it's not just plants, but just bringing nature into your house, doing as much as you can if you have decks or balconies or anything like that, to incorporate nature, potted plants or a bird feeder so that you're hearing the birds come around, or whatever it is. If you have a little plot of yard, then use that, as much as you possibly can. Make it comfortable, put up a sunshade if it's always, glaring in the sun. There are ways, and of course it's not, perfect the same way it would be if you just lived in the middle of the woods, but finding what your town can offer as well, finding the parks and being a part of what is out there as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great. I'll give a shout out to your Instagram page, which is really fun to follow along, because you give a lot of, let's not even say you give a lot. You help me to realize that there's a level of mindfulness that we can have about our spaces and our routines and the intersection between that. Like if you have workout equipment, like a yoga mat is a great example in our house. The yoga mat, we always keep one in the living room with the blocks. And that's something that I have heard you talk about, of like, hey, keep the equipment in view, because if you're just hanging out, why not use it? And that's something that I hope people will pick up on, and they'll follow your account and they'll tune into your show, because it is that level of mindfulness that I think we're so programmed to just go. And now we're in the situation where, what I love is we're both recording from our homes right now, and our office is our house, and our house is our office, and it's the playground, and it's it has become so much more to us than what we've ever had to know, because of this crazy living experiment that we got thrust into. Mm-hmm. And really, how do we design for a better, healthier, more proactive and vibrant space that's also resilient? Resiliency is huge. That's coming out right now. Right.
Yes. Yeah. And I think no matter where you are, you're going to have to be building resilient buildings from one catastrophe or another. So
yeah. Kate, let me wrap this up here with a great question of if you're in New Hampshire, where can you practice architecture? Are you working regionally, locally, nationally?
So it's interesting. I have been for my own balanced architecture, custom residential practice. I've been mostly just in New Hampshire. I was going back and forth between Colorado and New Hampshire, but have not been traveling, so I haven't been taking anything in Colorado. But I'm actually transitioning away from custom residential design with my own practice, and I'm joining forces with an architect out in California who have actually been working with them for a few years now, doing affordable housing, mostly multifamily affordable projects. So that's, and then my hope is to also get some projects, affordable multifamily projects here in New Hampshire as well. So that's the direction for my practice. Like what I will be practicing will be the multifamily affordable, and the project that I'm starting to work on now is actually it's not going to be the living certified, but it'll be through the Living Building Challenge. We'll be exploring possibilities there. So, yeah. So really all over the country, but in a different format now, more in the multifamily.
That is a wide open space. I mean, there's an architect out of Portland, Maine, Jesse Blackburn, I believe his last name is. It does affordable passive house multifamily. And I feel like there's a lot of people that are looking in that direction, but they're not exactly sure how to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, especially on the affordable realm. So it's a new thing I'll be learning because I've done plenty of multifamily, but living challenge certified was nowhere near these projects. So it's going to be an interesting challenge. And I hope that we'll figure out the best approaches to be able to incorporate these, healthy and sustainable living strategies into every building and not have it be an expensive endeavor.
Yeah. So. Well, I hope that you publish your work and the journey along the way, because there is a lot of eyes on that, including my own interest, simply because I think that affordability is going to continue to erode in the US. Mm-hmm. And yes. What do you do? I mean, we can't go back to building multifamily the way that we did in 1970.
Right. Yep. Yeah. No more sealed boxes.
Yeah.
So, I agree. But yes, I definitely will be. Just keeping everybody up to date. So, yeah.
Well, that sounds great. Well, Kate, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a real pleasure today.
Yeah, it has. Thank you so much.
Okay, everybody, that is a wrap. This is another just great episode that I'm so glad that you're able to tune in. And thank you for being interested in regenerative real estate. What we are trying to do is help people and planet thrive together by using the built environment as a catalyst. And so I've got a couple big asks for you. Number one is, can you please go to wherever you're listening to this podcast, leave us a rating and review. Those actually go so far. And since this is such a passion project for us, we really want to be able to attract the best thought leaders from around the world. Second is that if you really like the content that we're putting out, you can find us on our own Medium publication called Regenerative Real Estate. We also have a very active community on Facebook, which is called Regenerative Real Estate and Design, which you can request to be a part of, and we would love to have you. And third, this goes to what we do every single day, helping buyers and sellers demystify sustainability by working with people that want to either buy a property and are trying to figure out the financing of how do I actually live out my values? How do I put that water catchment system on there? Or how do I go finance a solar panel PV array? Or maybe I want to live closer to nature. And what are the properties that are out there that I can do that? And so we represent buyers like that. We also happen to represent sellers that maybe they've already invested in sustainable features. Maybe they have a living building or a LEED certified project. We want to help tell that story. So much of what goes on in the real estate industry is transactional thinking at best, and it translates down into agents just really don't know anything about sustainability. And for us, we think that the value is there, and we want to help highlight really the intrinsic value of it, not just the bedrooms and the baths and the square feet of what typical marketing goes on. So if you know of anybody that wants to buy or sell these kinds of properties that we're talking about, please reach out to us at Latitude, and be sure to subscribe for another great episode coming up next week.